I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At Tuesday's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, Senator Mike Lee decried attacks against police officers. Lee asked witnesses if, quote, anti-police rhetoric has an impact on officer safety and officer morale. Lee and witnesses denounced the defund the police movement, with one official saying, quote, there has to be accountability for rhetoric that's used to incite violence against our police.
Thank you, and thanks to each of you for your service and for being here today to talk to us. I'll never forget some of the emotions I experienced in 2020 when watching one weekend in June of that year as violent protests erupted in Salt Lake City, as they had in so many other cities at that time. I had never seen anything quite like this, not in my home state, not in Salt Lake City. I watched as a mob of violent protesters took a police car, turned it all the way upside down, and then, as I recall, lit the thing on fire. There were dozens of officers injured in those violent riots and protests that weekend. It was concerning. It felt as though it was foreboding something bad, in addition to being an awful thing in and of itself. And the facts as they've played out since then have shown that feeling to be accurate. 2 years later, and our country is in the midst of a really ugly crime spike. Homicide rates in Utah are up 44% compared to just a few years ago in 2019, along with assaults and property crimes and all sorts of other offenses. Attacks on police officers are at their highest level that we've seen since 1995. In 2021, there were 73 officers nationwide who were killed in the line of duty, and nearly one-third of those, 25 officers, were killed in unprovoked attacks. Now, to give that ugly statistic a terrifying context, only 2 unprovoked attacks against police officers were recorded in 2020. In Utah, more police officers were shot at in 2021 than in any other recorded year, resulting in injury to 8 police officers. In one of those cases, 2 officers were injured when they went simply to check on a man who was lying in the grass near the sheriff's office in Salt Lake City. And as they were doing that, the man opened fire on them. In March of this year, a man ran up behind a police officer as he was on patrol at the Salt Lake City International Airport and sucker punched him. And just last week, a 4-year-old boy shot at police officers from inside a vehicle in Salt Lake City, claiming that he had been encouraged to do precisely that by his father. This is troubling. Mr. Anderson, can you tell us what impact some of the anti-police rhetoric may have had over the last few years, and what impact that rhetoric and these alarming statistics might have in your experience when it comes to officer safety and officer morale?
I think in the incident I was involved in, it had a direct impact. Like I said before, the individual clearly did not like law enforcement. Clearly that day he was trying to accomplish killing an officer. We had so much information, and I won't get into all that as far as things that led up to that we didn't know, that we later found out. And when you go through these types of incidences, it just hits everybody very hard. And I don't know how you would prevent that unnecessarily, but I know that's why we're here.
Sergeant Penny, do you think anti-police rhetoric and violence trickles down into the community? And what impact do you think this has on members of communities throughout our country?
It has a major impact on communities. I'm sorry, Senator. It has a major impact on communities across this country, especially our communities of color. I'm active in the black community around the country, not just locally in Texas, but I travel the country and try to engage with the black community because I want to build a relationship between the police and the community. And what many of these people have told me was that they never agreed to a defund the police initiative. What happened was you had these politicians that got online and put out their messages about defunding the police, and it just proliferated through social media. But the reality is those communities with people of color were being victimized at a higher rate than anywhere else in this country. And the bottom line is we haven't found any way to hold the individuals accountable that have proliferated this message, that have allowed our police to be attacked. We just have to find a way, Senator, to where we can hold individuals accountable for using rhetoric, for and a lot of leadership here in Congress, a lot of leadership here. We have to find a way to hold these people accountable for encouraging the type of acts that's happening right now in our society. Thank you.
So the violence that occurs as a result of anti-police rhetoric very often isn't focused in the gated communities of the wealthy and the well-connected.
Absolutely not. No, it's the communities that are already having problems. I mean, this is where do you think the criminals come from? The criminals are right there alongside the people that they're living with, all the ghettos, the projects in the inner city. What do you think these criminals get out? They get out of prison, they go right back into those communities. Who do you think they're victimizing? A lot of these people can't pack up and just leave the community. That's like the catch-22 with these arguments. You know, we talk about why don't they just leave? Well, a lot of people can't leave. Half of my family is still in the inner city right now. They can't leave. They don't have the resources to up and go. But they're still being victimized by the criminals that are living beside them, that are living in these communities. So I will say there has to be accountability for rhetoric that's used to incite violence against our police across the country.
Thank you, Sergeant Penny. I see my time has expired.
Yeah, thank you,